Hey everybody, this is comparing and ordering fractions. This is hard. And the reason that it's hard is because there are a bunch of different strategies you can use to help you, and I wish there was just one single strategy that we could all use and say, this is the answer. It doesn't work that way. You've got to kind of be able to jump back and forth between a bunch of different things to be able to really do this correctly. So let's talk about some of these strategies first, and then I'm going to put up a number line, and we're going to take a look at the fractions on the number line using these strategies. So our first strategy is obviously using a number line. Let me draw one up here real quick. And the number one thing that I would like all fourth graders to be able to do is to be able to tell me, is this fraction bigger or smaller than a half? If you can do that, it makes it so much easier. So if this is 0, this is 1, right in the middle here is our fraction 1/2. If you can identify that it's smaller than 1/2, all of a sudden you're only working with this portion of the number line. If I can identify that it's bigger than a half, all of a sudden I know it's got to be over here someplace. If you can't tell me that, the job's going to be really, really difficult. So practice with your kids at home. Ask them questions. Is this bigger or smaller than a half? If they can't do that yet, that's where you have to start. You have to start there. Because if I can do that, then I can ask questions like this. Is it close to 0? If it's a super small fraction like 1/10, I know 1/10 is going to be probably someplace down here. That's close to 0. If it's close to 1/2, maybe I have a fraction like 9/10. 9/10 is pretty big. It's going to be way up here because it's almost full. But always start with that 1/2 idea. The next one I want to take a look at is using fraction circles. We do a lot with fraction circles in here. We have little fraction circle kits. And you can look and say, how full is your circle? So if I have 2 circles here, let's say I do 1/4. Well, 1/4 is pretty empty. That means it's small. 1/4 is probably going to be someplace down here. If I do 3/4, that's pretty full. 3/4 is probably going to be someplace up here. So you can use fraction circles to help you as well. Now the next 2 strategies use a lot of numbers. Let's take a look at those. This is more the kind of stuff you start doing as you become a grown-up and you're saying, I don't have a number line and I don't have multiplication fraction circles in my pocket. I can't really do that. I got to do it kind of in my noggin. So right here, make your denominators the same and compare who is bigger. And in one of my lessons we talk about equivalent fractions, making the denominators the same, and we talk about whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. And there's a whole funny dance I do around the classroom to make everybody remember. So let's take a look. Here's 6, here's 2. I can turn a 2 into a 6 by multiplying by 3. And whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. Another name for 1/2 is 3/6, and 3/6 is bigger than 2/6. So that's another strategy that you can use. The last one that we use is cross multiplying going diagonal up, and then we ask who is bigger. That's when I get these really weird fractions, like I know that these 2 are small, but I don't know who's the smallest, because they're so weird, they're so close together, I'm not sure. So I'm going to multiply diagonally going up. 5 times 2 is 10, so I have a 10 above this one. 9 times 1 is 9, I have a 9 above this one. Since this number is smaller, this fraction is going to be my smaller fraction. 1/5 is slightly smaller than 2/9. So now let's look at a fraction number line, and we'll apply all of these strategies, and you're going to watch how I bounce back and forth between all these different things. So, here's my number line. We'll start off with 1/4, 5/10, 5/6, and 9/10. And I'm going to talk out loud and walk you through how my brain is looking at this. So the first thing I always look for is I look for anything that is equal to 1/2. I look for that equivalent fraction. And I go, bam, right there. How did I know that? I just know from practice and practice and practice. 5/10, 4/8, 10/20. You've just got to start to remember these things. 5/10 is the same as 1/2. He's going to go right there. Now I start looking for things that are really, really big or really, really small. 9/10, well that's almost full because 10/10 is the whole thing. 9/10 is going to be over here. Well, I got a problem. 5/6, that's also really, really full. That's gonna be over here too, but I'm not sure which one is bigger. I'm just gonna put him over here for right now. We'll figure that out in a minute. 1/4. Well, now I gotta start looking and go, okay, well, 1/4, well, if it was 4 pieces, half of 4 is 2, so 2/4 would be right in the middle, which would mean 1/4 is gonna be smaller than that. And the kids are getting pretty good at being able to identify, okay, so that's probably 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. And I tell them, I'll give you a little bit of wiggle room here or here with your 1/4, but if you put it way down here, that's not gonna work. You gotta be somewhat accurate. Now we're gonna deal with this problem. The ones that are, we know they're both really big, but we don't know who's bigger. So let's use that cross multiplying strategy. 5/6, 9/10. Cross multiply going up. 10 times 5 is 50, so I have a 50 above here. 6 times 9 is 54. I have a 54 up here. Since this guy is smaller, this one is the smaller fraction. So I actually do have those in the correct order and probably in the approximate place where they should be. Okay? Let's get rid of these fractions and we'll try one more. I'll grab all of these down here and we'll bring those up. And take a look at those while I'm getting everything set up so you can guess where those might be headed. Okay, here we go. Once again, just because my brain works that way, I automatically look for anything that is equivalent to 1/2, and I don't see anything that is equivalent to 1/2. Nothing's this going to be right here on this line. Let's start looking for bigger or smaller fractions. Well, I see these two guys. These are teeny tiny. That's 1 out of 8 pieces. This is 1 out of 10 pieces, but I'm not really sure which one's bigger and which one's smaller. So I'm going to put those both down here, and we'll figure that out in a minute. Now 6/7, that's almost full. I have 6 out of the 7 pieces I need to have the whole thing. You're going to be way up here. And the dreaded 3/5. We don't like fifths because they're hard to break up. Odd numbers are hard to break up. So I tell the kids, think about fifths like this. If you had $5, what would half of $5 be? We have to kind of sit there and think a little bit because that's not an easy one to break up. But we do it that way because we know we can make change. If you just say half of 5, we don't see that all the time, but if we say half of $5, we go, oh, I can make change with that. $2.50. So if this was such a thing as a fraction, that thing would be right in the middle there. Well, this is like $3 out of $5. This is slightly bigger than this. So 3/5 is going to be slightly bigger than 1/2. Now let's deal with this problem I have down here with these two guys. I've got 1/8 and 1/10. Let's use that cross multiplying and see if that can help us. Okay, 8 times 1 is 8. So I have an 8 above this fraction. 10 times 1 is 10. I have a 10 above that fraction. This guy right here is my smaller number, which means that guy is my smaller fraction. I need to flip-flop these. So that is comparing and ordering fractions, and you can see why it's so difficult, why you have to be able to bounce back and forth between all of these different strategies. The number one strategy is being able to determine, am I smaller than 1/2 or am I bigger than 1/2? And then you start adding all those other strategies on there to finish the problem off.